Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com.
Celebrating 25 years ago today, David Deal founded Community IT Innovators, or something like that.
Welcome, everyone, to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast. I'm Carolyn Woodard, your host, and today I'm very excited to talk with our CEO, Johan Hammerstrom, about a very special occasion. Johan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. Happy to be back on the podcast. I'm Johan Hammerstrom. I'm the CEO.
And what are we going to talk about?
Today, we're going to talk about the history of Community IT and specifically our 25th anniversary. So February 1st marks the founding of Community IT Innovators, and we're very excited to be celebrating our 25th anniversary this year.
Well, thank you for doing this with me. What I actually thought we would do is go backward in time, if that is okay with you.
Sure.
Just kind of, I think we've told the story from, of the founding a couple of times. So I was thinking the highlights came to my mind were 2020, going all remote and, doubling in the size of number of clients and number of staff.
So we became 100% employee owned in 2012.
2008, 2010, we really focused in on what, our core services were that we were really good at and decided to, pair off some of the other offerings we had and be the best MSP we could be.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth mentioning and recognizing, that for the first 10 years of the company, I think it's worth honoring and acknowledging like those teams and the work that they did. And, they did a lot of amazing work. It was of another era.
Yeah.
They were building databases and websites from scratch, and that is like that stopped being the way
that isn't how we do it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is great because it demonstrates like we change and we evolve and and that's a good quality to have if you're looking for a long-term partner. It's not going to be stuck in a past technology.
Yeah.
Trying to get you into it because that's what they do,
Well, so the ESOP was founded in 2005.
So is that when the process started to move the shares to employees?
Yeah. 2005 is when the company was converted from an LLC into a corporation when we incorporated. And when we became incorporated, Dave was the majority shareholder, but some of the shares were owned that was when the ESOP trust was created. And I think at the founding, it was like 5 or 10% of the shares were owned by the ESOP. The things that come back to me are, there's the Great Recession that had a big impact on the company.
We weathered the financial crisis, and that helped us focus on what we do best and refine that offering.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in some ways that goes back to we've always been subject to the greater forces of history.
So we started as a company, as a division of another company called Reliacom. And that was founded in the early 90s by a man called Chris Chang, and our founder, David Deal, worked for him and what became in charge of a practice within Reliacom that was focused solely on nonprofits. And then after about 8 or 9 years, for various reasons, David Deal spun out the company and founded Community IT. And I believe you've said in the past that he had to take out a mortgage on his house, second mortgage, and was the typical small business founder. And that has created a lot of confusion about how old Community IT actually is.
So the history of that is that, let's say until we became an ESOP, so from 2001 to 2005, most of the people in the company had been at Reliacom, and not for that long. I mean, for a couple of years, but I think at the time we were a very young company, and we felt like, we didn't want to tell people, well, we've only been around for a year or
Less
two,
than a year,
less than a
yeah.
year, because it didn't really reflect the
Yeah,
depth of experience we had as a business. So we used the starting point of
93.
community services division. Well, so that's where it started to get confusing, because Reliacom was founded in 1993, but the community services division was founded in 1994. And then community IT was founded in 2001. So you had three different dates to pick from, and people would just pick the one that was the most
Yeah.
convenient for the circumstance. So it just created all this confusion. So I think it's been long enough. My opinion is that it's been long enough that February 1st is the official start date of this company.
Exactly. So, can you tell me a little bit more about the changes in IT and technology and where community IT has come from over those years?
The internet sort of came along in the mid 90s, and it was kind of humming along in the background, but that was a lot of the early business for Reliacom came from
Mhm.
the growth of the internet. And then the dot-com boom happened in the late 90s, and then the bust happened in 2000. And that was what really forced Reliacom's hand and caused us to split off from Reliacom. It was really a result of the dot-com bust that we became our own company. Because I think if it hadn't been for that, Reliacom probably would have. I mean, they eventually went out of business because they lost all of their customers. Because I think people forget that Northern Virginia was kind of like Silicon Valley of the
AOL.
East. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that AOL complex was like the thing.
it was the thing, and all these people were coming out of AOL. Nowadays, like no one would take that seriously because of where AOL is now. But at the time, like it was spinning out all of these small businesses, and that was Reliacom's bread and butter. And so when they all went out of business in 2000, that like really stressed the company. And that's what, if that hadn't happened, we probably would have continued doing what we were doing because we had no interest in being our own company. It was kind of convenient for us to be this sort of, rebel. We were all young. We were in our 20s, and we were like, we're rebels. We're not part of the corporate, we're not corporate robots like trying to make money. We're out here like helping these small organizations. We didn't want to run our own business. We were kind of forced to, by that shift. So then dot-com bust, we become community IT in February of 2001. In September of that same year, 6 months later, 9/11 happens.
That's right.
That's causes all of these changes in the nonprofit sector. But then it also, like the internet really takes off after that. And we really grew a lot, in that period from 2002 to, let's just say 2007. We were growing really fast. We were having a lot of different identity crises as a business. Like, who do we want to be? What kind of business do we want to be? And then the Great Recession happened, in 2007. That really ultimately led us to divest of the web database and consulting, businesses. And then kind of coming out of that, the MSP model really started to take hold in the industry, in the late 2000s.
I feel like, when I joined community IT, we were still doing a lot of very custom work, custom database building and custom websites.
Mm,
And we were using standardized technology, like you build a SQL database, right? But we were the only ones who could maintain it. Unless you had, someone, if you had someone at your nonprofit who could build a database, they would build it and maintain
mhm.
it. But if you called us in, like we were the ones who knew how it worked, basically. And I feel like even at that time, we were learning, and the best practices was moving toward standardized technologies and away from highly customized technologies for nonprofits. And it forced a big change for us, but I think that demonstrates our ability to evolve and to follow the best practices and the data and what we were seeing in the community rather than focusing just on what we were trained to do, basically. Do you think
Hmm.
that's fair to say?
Absolutely. Yeah. There was a great book that came out in 2010, 2011, maybe earlier than that, called The Big Switch. And it's probably, I'm sure it's been forgotten because the premise of it is kind of quaint in retrospect. But it was all about the cloud and everything moving to the cloud. And the analogy that the author used was he was looking back at the Industrial Revolution in the late 1800s. And he said that in the late 1800s, every factory had its own power supply. Every factory had its own coal-fired furnace, was generating its own power, its own electricity. And the big change that happened in industrial production in the early 1900s was replacing all of these individual power supplies with the grid, the power grid, and the power supply that's feeding power to the grid. And so he said the same thing's going to happen in IT. Everybody has their little server in their closet with their own email server and their own website and their own, custom thing that they've built. And that's all going to get shifted into these common, much larger, much more efficient, and better run, common infrastructure storage facilities, which are data centers. And again, like we forget, now data centers are just sort of a fact of life. And so we take it for granted that they're there. But when you look back at 2010, like everybody had a server in their closet. If you're a small organization, if you're a larger organization, you had a nice built out server room with HVAC and the fancy like chemical, fire extinguishing systems and
Filtering, yeah.
stuff. Yeah. But it's the same thing with databases. Like I think the thing that helped our database business more than anything else was Microsoft Access. Because back in like 2000, 2001, you got the Microsoft Office suite and it came with Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Microsoft Access. And then you had an intern in your office who was like really good at computers and they built you a little Access database. And then when their internship was over, they left. And now you're like, I have all my critical organizational data is in this database and I can't fix it. I can't maintain it. So then our solution was, yeah, don't use Access databases. We'll build a database for you on a more robust platform like Cold Fusion. We'll store it like on a MySQL server on your little server in the office. And then the next evolution beyond that was don't instead of having it like on a custom database that you built that's hosted in your office, move to a commercially available, database. And ultimately, I think that's like the Salesforce. Like Salesforce has made a ton of inroads in the nonprofit space, basically by taking all of that and managing the database, the application, the hosting, all of it. And same thing happened with websites with like WordPress, and then even more so with Squarespace. But people used to build their own websites too. Like that Microsoft suite also came with Microsoft Front Page. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember it.
And people were like, I'm building my own website. They're like creating a Word document. It was as easy, as creating a Word document, and people would host it off of the servers in their closet. I mean, it's all that was a long time ago. But our business evolved as the industry changed and, as the cloud, everything sort of evolved to this much more robust and efficient environment in the cloud. And so our services that we offered as a business changed over the years. And we've always really embraced the more efficient, more stable, more reliable approach. Like I remember a lot of MSPs were pretty resistant of the cloud because they felt like they were going to lose all their business. And our premise has always been we want to do what's best for the nonprofit sector. And if there's still a need for us, then we will continue to be in business. And if there's no longer a need for us, then, we should shut down the business because we're not delivering value to the nonprofit sector anymore. And I remember there was this one company, Zenith Infotech. They were like an MSP tools company. They had like they had a help desk that you could buy. They had a backup solution that you could buy. They had a endpoint management solution. This is all very like primitive back in like the late 2000s, early 2010s. And they had it's called the Zenith Cloud. And you can sell a cloud solution to your customers. And the Zenith Cloud was a little half rack with like a bunch of servers in it that you put in the closet. And we're like, this isn't the cloud. And they're like, well, we call it the Zenith Cloud. And so you're basically like misleading your customers into thinking that they were moving to the cloud and they were moving into this like, they were the worst. They went out of business, not surprisingly.
Inconceivable. Inconceivable.
Ridiculous.
I don't think that word means what you think it means.
Exactly.
So I think we've been very agile at moving with the technology. And as you said, I think, have for a long time recommended, because we have this long experience working with nonprofits and seeing, working strategically with them and seeing what the needs are and seeing that locking yourself into some very customized solution really limits your options and can make it very expensive because if there's only one consultant who can repair that thing, then you have to pay them whatever they ask because you've got this database that only they can fix. So we've been advocating for a long time for people to, move to very standardized solutions where there are a lot of consultants, a lot of companies can help you, which kind of seems counterintuitive, but we know that we are very good at helping people with those solutions, at helping organizations. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit and ask you, as a long timer, about the people. Because another thing that we talk about often is how hard it is for nonprofits to hire IT personnel internally, to find someone that has the right mix of that skill set of being a very tech savvy, like having all the technical skills and also understanding nonprofits and also being able to think strategically about what IT the nonprofit needs and also be a people person and be able to interact with all of the nonprofit staff who are often also usually very people-oriented people and just how difficult it is to find those people. So can you talk a little bit about the people at Community IT over the years and how did we find the people? You said that a lot of people at Reliacom, came with us and became the company at Community IT. So what about the people over 25 years?
Yeah, well, it's I think the common factor among the employees at Community IT who've been here the longest, stayed the longest, and enjoyed the experience the most, I would say, has been their commitment to working with nonprofit organizations. That's kind of the most important factor. Obviously, having technical skills and experience, the ability to do technical work at a high level is also really important. So, if you don't have a good technical base, it's going to be hard to be successful at an IT company providing IT service. That kind of goes without saying. But technically talented people are hard to find just in general. But then for nonprofit organizations, finding technical people who also are really committed to the nonprofit sector and the work that nonprofits are doing can also be challenging. And I think that's the thing that has been the most important for staff who've really found this to be a valuable experience, and for us in terms of recruiting and retaining really talented technical staff. I think one of the things that we provide for our employees is the opportunity to be in a community with other technical people who are committed to working with nonprofit organizations. Because I think one of the things that we've observed over the years, especially with smaller nonprofit organizations that only have one IT person, they're kind of alone in the organization. There's no one else they can talk to about technical issues, what it's like to be an IT services provider. And so one of the benefits of working at community IT is that you have this huge community of peers that you can turn to quickly for guidance with technical issues, with, if you're trying to solve a technical problem and you're not able to, there's a bunch of people that you can turn to work with. But also guidance with non-technical issues. Trying to get things done at a nonprofit organization can be challenging at times. And so being able to turn to other technical people who have experience with nonprofits is also something that can be really beneficial. So I think that commitment to working with nonprofits is really key. And I will add that, especially with larger nonprofit organizations that have, IT departments or teams with at least 2 or 3 people, what I've observed over the years is that those organizations that also have internal IT staff who are really committed to the mission of the organization and the work that they're doing, that makes a big difference in those larger organizations as well. And I've had the great honor to work with some incredible IT professionals over the years at the different nonprofit organizations that we've worked with. And there have been a lot of nonprofits that we've supported who've really benefited from their internal staff, their in-house staff, that are very talented technically and extremely committed to the work that they're doing. And that's, really makes a huge difference. And these are all, IT professionals that could be making a lot more money somewhere else. And they've all recognized that there are more important things in life than maximizing your earning potential.
I think also that once you have a bunch of technology nerds who love nonprofits together, our culture kind of snowballed as well. So we attracted other, employees who
Mhm.
really enjoyed our internal culture and enjoyed the mission. And it's something actually now that you're saying that I'm realizing about technology people in nonprofits in the larger environment is that there are several organizations connecting us. So you have Inten that has the conference in TC where nonprofit IT people get together. You have TAG, Technology Association of Grant Makers, which also started out as a group of IT professionals at foundations who wanted to talk to each other and share stories and resources and support. So it is something that is, I don't know that it's unique to our sector, but it's something that really can help. If you're listening to this podcast right now and feeling like you don't know one to talk to, there are organizations out there that are very supportive.
Yeah, and if I could, I just want to also shout out and really honor and recognize our staff who are immigrants to the United States, because that's been a key part of our story as a company as well. And from the beginning, we've had staff who are immigrants from day one, but about 10 years ago, we started partnering with Carlos Rosario Public Charter School in Washington, D.C., and that's an adult education public charter school that provides a variety of different educational tracks, culinary, hospitality, but also IT. And we partnered with them to provide job placement for a lot of their graduates. And so we ended up hiring a lot of, first generation immigrant staff as a result of that partnership. And that's been a huge part of our story and our success as well. And I think that's another example of um, sort of the positive snowball effect, where we hired a few first generation immigrants to work at community IT, and it really helped transform the culture to make it more welcoming. And so we have staff from all over the world, and we really have opportunity to learn from each other, and learn about somebody else's cultural background, learn about their experience in the U.S. And so that's been a rich part of our history. And then I would be remiss not to also acknowledge and honor our Mennonite history, which may come as a surprise to people, but our founder, David Deal, is a Mennonite. Many of our earliest staff, especially in the pre-community IT Reliacom days, were Mennonite interns. They were part of the Mennonite Voluntary Service and were, being assigned to DC to provide tech support to all these nonprofits in DC back in the 90s. And so I think our Mennonite background has also been a huge silent. Mennonites are, they don't bring a lot of attention on themselves, but it's the culture of service and humility and resourcefulness and frugality. I mean, I think those are all cultural values that we have as a company that are very positive, that I think can be traced back in many ways to our Mennonite roots. So I just want to acknowledge and also just share my own gratitude. I'm not a Mennonite, but I feel like I've benefited greatly from the Mennonites.
Yeah, same here. I remember there was a period where, how there's the trendy business books, and they kind of come in and out of trendiness, and the servant leader, there were just 20 best-selling books on business about how to be a servant leader. And I remember during that trend thinking, oh, but we've been doing that forever. That's just a huge part of our culture. So yeah, that definitely came from the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, I want to wrap up and be, mindful of our time together. But I just wondered, 25 years, that's a huge achievement. And small businesses lasting 25 years, it's not all of them make it that far.
No, that's true.
I feel like, from my perspective, at least, we have such a strong foundation. We have, a great history of 25 years. But I wonder if you want to give us just a thought or two about where are we going? What do you see changing in the next, 25 years? That's impossible to predict in IT, but maybe the next 5 years, 10 years.
Well, I think, our purpose as a business is that's the bedrock, and it's to help nonprofit organizations accomplish their mission through the effective use of technology. So as long as there's a way to do that, we will continue to be relevant, I think. We have changed dramatically over the last 5 years. We've gone from being a business that was deeply rooted in Washington, D.C., part of the community here. We still are, but we've added, I would say close to half of our staff now are outside of the DC area. We've gone from being a very location-based business to being a fully virtual, fully remote business. We've navigated that change successfully, but that has changed our company and, is leading us in a new direction. So in some ways, it's a process of discovery. We're figuring out, what does it mean to be a fully virtual, fully remote company? What does it mean to serve nonprofit organizations nationwide rather than just in Washington, D.C.? And I think one of the great values and advantages of being an employee-owned business is that it's not just one or two people's vision. It's sort of a collective vision that we are figuring out together. And that's been a long part of our history. And I think when you look at all of the changes we've made over the years, closing down some lines of business, starting new lines of business, finding better ways to serve the nonprofit sector, a lot of that has been driven not only by our purpose, but also by the engagement that every employee has with the mission of the company. And I think that goes back to our employee ownership roots and identity. And so I think that's going to be, it's the core things, those won't change: employee ownership, the value of employee engagement, the purpose of serving nonprofit organizations. the technology does change, like you said, Carolyn. It changes in ways that we can't predict. We just don't know. Like in 2021, no one was. I mean, I'm sure some insiders could have seen ChatGPT coming, but no one else did. Now it's here. Now we're all figuring out what it means. There's going to be some other new thing that none of us are predicting in 2 or 3 years. So we got to stay agile. But I think as long as we're grounded in those things that have made us who we are, it'll help us to be successful in adapting to the new technology changes and finding ways to help nonprofits use that new technology effectively and appropriately. So I probably just avoided giving you a specific answer, but that's the
No, that was a perfect answer.
Okay.
I think that I mean, as you said, there's only so much you can predict, but relying on our foundation is what is going to lead us forward for sure.
Maybe this will be a good note to close on. We've added a lot of new staff over the last, 3 or 4 years. And I'm just I think the thing that excites me the most about community IT is seeing those staff get excited about doing this work and seeing them figure out new and better ways of delivering IT service to nonprofit organizations. And so growing and evolving the company is a collective effort that every employee at Community IT is a part of and vital to making happen. And I see that happening as people start to get more experience working here. I start to see them, finding new ways to deliver service. That's extremely exciting. And so to me, like that's the future of the company, is that employee engagement, employee creativity that everybody brings to the work that they do.
That's a great place to leave it. Thank you, Johan, for joining me today to talk about our 25th anniversary year and our actual anniversary, February 1st. And I'm just so happy and proud, as you said, to work for a company like this.
Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge all the employees over the years. There's been several hundred who have worked at Community IT at one time or another. And we were actually, me and some of the old timers were just thinking back to who was working here when we first started. And we could remember every single person, all their names, and they've all meant a lot, to those of us who've been here, to all the organizations that we've worked with. So this anniversary, it's not just for those of us who are still here, who have been here the whole time, but also for anyone who's ever worked at Community IT over the years. This is, partly a result of your work too. So just want to thank all of them also.
Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.